Have you ever met a man who acts like he doesn't care, only to hold on tighter than anyone you've ever known? He pulls away, creates distance, speaks in silences, and yet somehow you still feel his presence, not in words, not in warmth, but in the tension, the watching, the strange heaviness that lingers after he leaves the room. This is not love. This is not detachment. This is obsession in disguise, the kind that wears coldness like armor, the kind that hopes you'll chase what he's too afraid to claim. He tells himself he doesn't need you, but he watches your stories. He disappears from messages, but lingers in energy. He avoids connection, but won't let go. And the more you move on, the more his presence tightens, like a shadow that grows longer the farther you walk into the light. Why? Because you triggered something in him he's been trained his entire life to suppress. Vulnerability, exposure, the deep ache of being seen. You weren't just beautiful, you were dangerous, not in what you said, but in what you mirrored. He saw himself in you, not the curated self he presents to the world, but the buried one. The boy behind the bravado, the fear behind the flirtation. And when you reached for him with softness instead of strategy, his entire nervous system sounded the alarm. Because the truth is, he doesn't know how to hold real. He knows how to conquer, how to flirt, how to perform. But presence, consistency, mutual depth, that terrifies him. So he retreats. Not because you were too much, but because you saw too much. And now, in his coldness, you feel the burn of something unspoken. He ghosts you. But it's not absence, it's control. He ignores your texts, not because he doesn't want to talk, but because he wants you to feel the sting of his withdrawal. This isn't indifference. This is emotional management. Calculated silence designed to create pursuit. Because deep down, he's obsessed. But not with you exactly. With the version of himself he feels when you want him. You validate his worth by chasing, by waiting, by wondering. And so, his coldness becomes a test. How badly does she want me? How much will she tolerate? Will she try harder if I do less? But what happens when you stop chasing? What happens when you see through the illusion? That's when the obsession starts to surface. Because now he doesn't know how to hold power. He only knows how to withhold love, not offer it. He only knows how to keep you close by keeping you off balance. He's not cold because he feels nothing. He's cold because he feels too much and doesn't know what to do with it. And so he masks intensity with detachment. He disguises fear as arrogance. He wraps his obsession in distance so he doesn't have to admit how much you got under his skin. And you? You feel crazy, confused, frustrated by the mixed signals, drawn to something that hurts, but also pulls. This is the trap of the cold obsessive. He doesn't offer you love. He offers you psychological gravity. He becomes a mirror for your own abandonment wounds. And suddenly, you're not chasing him. You're chasing validation. Not because he is powerful, but because he withholds just enough to make you feel like you almost earned it. But you didn't come here to almost be loved. You didn't come here to decode silence or fill emotional gaps. You came here to be met, to be held, to be seen without games, without withholding, without needing to bleed in order to be chosen. And once you remember that, his cold detachment starts to feel less like mystery and more like manipulation. Because obsession doesn't always look like passion. Sometimes it looks like a man who disappears, but never lets you go. He doesn't follow you, but he notices when you don't notice him. He says he's not interested, But he shows up in every subtle way. The likes, the silence, the perfectly timed distance. It's a strange obsession. One that doesn't scream, but watches. One that doesn't confess, but reacts. Because here's the truth. He doesn't want to lose you. He just doesn't know how to hold you. And so he holds power instead. Power over your thoughts. Power over your reactions. Power over your uncertainty. Because the man who is obsessed but emotionally unavailable doesn't want intimacy. He wants to be remembered. He wants to live rent-free in your heart, even if he was never willing to build anything inside it. He pulls away, not to protect you, but to protect himself from what you represent. You are the mirror he cannot tolerate, because you don't just reflect love, you reflect truth. And truth is the most terrifying thing to a man still hiding behind his performance, because you saw him, not the curated version, not the one that gets applause, but the shadow. You saw his self-doubt, his control issues, his unresolved grief, his need to dominate because he feels small when things are mutual. And instead of controlling you with intensity, he tries to control you with distance. But here's what he didn't expect: that you'd grow stronger in the silence, that you wouldn't chase him forever, that eventually you'd stop translating coldness into mystery and start naming it for what it is: emotional immaturity. And that's when the obsession gets louder. Because when he feels you slipping, not just in words, but in energy, he doesn't step forward. He tightens his grip in invisible ways. He starts watching more closely. He reappears at the edge of your detachment. He says just enough to reopen the door, but never enough to walk all the way through. Why? Because full presence would require him to surrender control, to be vulnerable, to let go of the power dynamic where he is the center of gravity. And his ego can't handle that. So he hovers, he lingers in your mind. He keeps himself alive in your emotional landscape by offering fragments. A half apology, a vague compliment, a moment of softness that pulls you back in just long enough for him to disappear again. It's not love, it's not clarity, it's emotional bait. And the more you take it, the more you stay trapped in a dance where he leads with silence and you follow with suffering. But the woman who awakens to this game, she stops playing. She doesn't need revenge. She doesn't need closure. She simply walks, because she finally realizes that the obsession was never mutual. It was orchestrated. She was trying to love someone who only knew how to create emotional dependency. And when she steps out of that dynamic, something powerful happens. His detachment stops working. He starts to feel his own silence. He begins to notice that control without connection feels a lot like emptiness. Because he wanted to be chased, not because he wanted her, but because he wanted to feel wanted. And when she stops giving him that fuel, he's left with the one thing he's been avoiding: himself. His own void, his own fear, his own lack of emotional capacity. And that is where the hidden obsession begins to unravel. Not in your presence, but in your absence. He doesn't miss the conversations. He misses the power. He misses the emotional pull you gave him. He misses the feeling of being desired without having to truly show up. And now that you're gone, he calls it heartbreak. But what he's really mourning is the control he no longer holds. Because you were never his. He just got used to you being available. He thought you'd always be there. Not because you said you would, but because you always were. You answered. You explained, you forgave, even when he didn't ask for it. You filled the silences he created. You carried the weight of both hearts. You stayed emotionally open, even as he remained emotionally distant. But here's the twist he never saw coming. You weren't staying because you were weak. You were staying because you still believed in the potential. And once that belief died, so did your devotion. Not with a scream, not with a final confrontation, but with the quietest shift of all. You stopped hoping. And that, more than anything, is what dismantles his illusion of control. Because cold detachment only works on the woman who's still emotionally invested, still reaching, still waiting. But when a woman goes emotionally silent, not to punish, but because she's finally empty, he feels it like a psychic collapse. Because now the game is broken. Now his obsession has no object. His strategy has no audience. His control has no weight. He scrolls back through old messages. He checks your online status. He watches from behind the screen, looking for a signal that he still matters. But he doesn't. Not because he wasn't enough, but because he never showed up fully. You were in. He was halfway. And that was never your fault. But it was always your choice, until you made a different one. And that choice, to withdraw your energy without warning, that's what haunts him. Not your body, not your words, not even your presence, but the fact that you're no longer accessible. Because now he has to face the terrifying truth. You were real. And he wasn't ready. He was addicted to the feeling of you, but terrified of the depth of you. He wanted your glow, but not your storm. He wanted your softness, but not your boundaries. And now you are gone. Not in anger, but in energetic finality. That kind of departure is irreversible. It doesn't come back around. It doesn't circle back when he's finally ready. Because by the time he realizes what he's lost, you've already rebuilt yourself from the silence he left behind. And here's what most men like him never expect. The woman who walked away doesn't return as the same version he once knew. If she returns at all, it's not to resume the story. It's to end it completely. Because when a woman pulls her love out of an emotionally unsafe space, she rewrites the contract. Not for him, for herself. She no longer feels magnetized to coldness. She no longer confuses obsession with connection. She no longer flinches at silence, because she now knows how to thrive in it. Her own silence became her sanctuary. Her healing became her home. And him? He's left circling the version of her that no longer lives. He reaches out and gets stillness. He drops hints and gets no response. He offers breadcrumbs and watches them fall to the ground, untouched, because now she sees the truth. His coldness was never strength. It was fear, and she is no longer in relationship with fear. She doesn't need warmth, she is warmth. She doesn't beg for love. She embodies it. And in that embodiment, his obsession has nowhere to land. It floats in the emptiness he created. It echoes in the room he left silent too long. It suffocates in the control he once called clarity. Because the obsession didn't die when she walked away. It finally had to face itself. He still checks for you, not always in obvious ways, sometimes through mutual friends, sometimes through silence that waits for you to fill it. Sometimes through late-night thoughts, he'll never speak aloud. But what he doesn't realize is this. He's no longer looking for you. He's searching for the version of himself that only existed when you loved him. He misses how you looked at him, how you believed in him, how you forgave the things he hadn't even begun to apologize for. But that woman, she's gone. Not because she died in heartbreak, but because she resurrected herself in self-respect. He thought detachment would make him untouchable, but it only made him unreachable, even to himself. Because obsession without intimacy is starvation. And now he feels it. The hunger for something real, the ache for what he never let bloom. But the woman he once held at a distance is no longer trying to close the gap. She's no longer reaching across the emotional canyon he built. She's not waiting on the other side with softness and second chances. She's moved. Moved from waiting to walking. From hoping to healing. From attachment to awareness. And that awareness is what sets her free. She no longer wonders what he feels. She knows. She no longer asks why he pushed her away. She understands. She no longer needs him to say the words. She's heard the truth loud enough in the silence. He was obsessed with control. She was searching for connection. He mastered the performance. She mastered the pause. And now she no longer plays in dynamics where silence is used as power. She speaks through her absence, through her peace, through her refusal to lower herself for proximity. Because obsession without emotional maturity is just ego in disguise. And she's done feeding egos. He may remember her forever. Not because she made him feel powerful, but because she made him feel seen. And now, she is the one thing he can't control, can't forget, can't replace. Because the most unforgettable women are not the ones who chased, but the ones who walked away and never looked back. She became untouchable, not because she hardened, but because she finally realized. Her love was never the problem. It was where she placed it. And so now, she chooses. With clarity, with softness that has boundaries, with silence that is not manipulation, but protection. He lost her not because she was too much, but because she finally saw she was never too little. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. She